Hello dear P3s. I still remain Miss Ruth Nanteza, and today's lesson will still based on the verbs. I'm going to handle English, and this will be the third lesson. To take you back briefly, I left you with an activity of which I believe that you all did, and you must have followed, or you must have passed it if you followed the principle that was governing us that day, or that governs those verbs we dealt with in the second lesson. So I want you to take you back briefly before I proceed with the third lesson. So my friends who missed the second lesson, please listen so that I can remind you before we proceed to this third lesson. Our last lesson, or the previous lesson, that was the second lesson, we were handling verbs, action words, the doing words that add s in simple present tense. I remember telling you that those verbs that end in e, those action words that end in e, they all add s when it comes to everyday tense, that is the simple present tense. And most of the verbs add s when it comes to simple present tense, or actions that always happen or usually take place. It depends on a certain period of time, but normally done. Now today's lesson, we are going to deal with action words that end in O, that end in letter O, SH, others end in SS. They are those ones that end in SH. What happens to them? These ones add ES in simple present tense. I want to task you, begin thinking of those verbs. Find out those action words that end in those letters, that end in O, SS, CH, and SH. Have you tried to identify some of them? Have you written them down? Having identified them, the principle is simple. Add ES onto those verbs. You will get the proper spelling. You will pronounce them well. And after adding ES and you pronounce them the way they are meant to be pronounced, know that you have transferred that verb from the base form to simple present tense. I'm going to give you some examples of these verbs and find out whether you have similar verbs. And you will find out that you have more verbs than mine, which is really nice because what I'm giving are just examples. As I write mine, continue to find out more verbs that end in those letters. Those ones that end in O, we can have verbs like go. When it comes to simple present, the principle is easy. We add ES. We have the word go. It ends with letter O. We add ES and it will be read as goes. We have the word do. Everybody said do. So when it comes to simple present, we shall have does after adding ES. I've given you two that end in O, but there are other verbs. We have those ones that end in C H. For example, catch. It will become, or it will be read as catches. Should I give you more that end in CH? Find out more. I don't want to spoon feed you so much. We have those ones that end in SS, like mess. We shall have messes. We have the word pass. After adding ES, it will be read as passes. He passes here every evening. He passes at our home every afternoon. It can be daily, it can be weekly, or sometimes. Okay, we have another one, and that is hiss. This one is done by the snake. The sound made by the snake. So after adding ES, it will be read as hisses. The snake hisses in the bush every night, or sometimes, or always. We have those ones that end in SH. I know you have made your list already. Mention those ones that end in SH. You normally perform this action. You do this action every morning or every after a meal, and that is brush. If you normally do it, it will turn to brushes. Everybody say brushes. Remember, if we are dealing with singular nouns or singular pronouns, the verb changes when it comes to simple present tense. That's why I shall say, she brushes her teeth every after a meal. But if they are many, or if I'm dealing with pronouns, and I myself, remember, the verb doesn't change. I'll say, I brush my teeth every after a meal. With brushes, I'll say, he brushes his teeth every after a meal. You can see there is a principle that governs this tense. Okay, another one. Let me add another one that ends in SH, and that is slash. What happens to your compound every after a week? Maybe it is the gate man, or it's you. Maybe John. We can say John slashes our compound weekly, or every week, or a certain day. These are just examples. Don't say, oh, they are only those. No, my dear. The principle is verbs that end in O, CH, SS, and SH add ES when we are referring to those actions that usually take place. It can be daily. When I talk about daily, that is every day. It can be weekly, monthly, yearly, or sometimes. Okay. Having looked at these verbs that end that add ES, I want us to look at another category of verbs. Okay. There are also those verbs that end in Y. Had you realized that we have those action words that end in Y? Begin thinking about them. Some of the actions have just taken place, or you are still doing them, or there are people who are doing them. Think about them. What happens to these verbs? Have you identified some of them so that we can know what happens to them? when we are to change them to simple present tense, what happens? The principle is this. Verbs that end in Y, but before Y, there is a consonant letter. Drop Y for I and add ES. What do I mean? There are those verbs that end in Y. But having found out that that verb ends in Y, look at that letter before Y. Find out, is it a consonant or is it a vowel? Remember, there are two categories of letters. There are those ones that are vowels. The vowels are 5. That is A, E, I, O, and U. The rest of the letters are consonants. So those consonants are the ones we are dealing with right now. If your verb ends in Y and before Y there is a consonant letter, the thing is very simple. Drop Y. After Y departing or after dropping Y, in the place of Y, we shall have I. So the place is not left vacant. I will come in and take up the place. Because no one is there, Mr. Y has left. So I will come in and stand in for Y. After writing I, we shall add ES. This is what I mean. Let's have some examples. Let's have the word carry. Before Y, which letter is there? Letter R. Find out. Is it a consonant or a vowel? It's a consonant letter. What happens if it's a consonant letter? The thing is easy. We shall drop letter Y. And in the place of letter Y, what happens? Remember, we are left with these letters. Without Y, in the place of Y, we shall have I. After writing I, what happens? We add ES, and we shall have carries. Give me more. We have verbs like marry. Marry ends in Y. Before Y, there is letter R, which is a consonant letter. We shall drop Y, and we shall remain with these letters. Letter I will come in to take up the place of Y, and then we shall add ES to come up with marries. We have the word bury. We shall drop Y because we have letter R, which is before Y. The simple remains the same. We shall have I in the place of Y before we add ES. Okay, we have another verb here, an action word, which is bury. It ends in Y. Before Y, there is letter R, which is a consonant. We shall do the same. We shall drop letter Y, and in the place of Y, we shall have I before adding ES. Another verb is dirty. We shall do the same thing. It ends in Y, and before Y there is R, which is a consonant. We shall drop letter Y. And guess what? We shall remain with DR, but in the place of Y, we shall write E and then add ES. It will become dries. Let's go to try. It ends in Y. Before Y, there is a consonant. We shall drop letter Y and we shall write I in the place of Y and add ES. We shall have tries. Okay. Having looked at these verbs that end in Y, but before Y there is a consonant, remember we said we drop Y for I before we add ES. Now, I know you have this question. Now, what about those ones that end in Y, but before Y, there is a vowel letter? What do we do? Yeah, this is what we do. When it comes to those verbs that end in Y, but before Y, there is a vowel letter. Remember, vowel letters are only 5. That is A, E, I, O, and U. These ones, you simply add S. Isn't it easy? Mention them. We have verbs like pray. You should do this every day. So I pray every morning. Rita plays every morning. I've added S because before Y there is a vowel letter, which is letter A. We have this one that you love so much. I know you can't miss a day without playing. So when it comes to play, we shall do the same. We add only S. Why? There is a vowel letter before Y. So we simply add S to come up with plays. Little children play every day. The child plays every evening, you can see. Let's continue. We have the word, the verb stay. He stays in a small hut. We shall only add S because of the vowel letter before Y. Do you need more examples? Okay, we have the word pay. What happens? Daddy pays our school fees monthly. Oh, every term. We have another verb which is delay. It ends in Y. Before Y there is a vowel letter. So we shall say delays. He delays to serve us tea every day. You can see. So you can add on the list. I think you have mastered the principle that governs the verbs we have dealt with today. So as I conclude my lesson, I'll request you to construct some sentences using the learnt verbs. And as your teacher, I'll give you an exercise to test you, to find out whether you can identify those verbs that drop Y and add I before you add ES, and those ones that end in Y but add S without dropping any letter. Okay, see you next time. Stay safe.